Across Europe, young people are calling for more meaningful participation in shaping their communities. Add Something Meaningful is an Erasmus Plus project that answers this call. Together, and along more than 2 years,
Dear ladies and gentlemen, here in the hall as well as those online, we will start with the conference Add Something Meaningful, supporting youth participation in the local community in 5 minutes. So don't go away, just stay with us. They did not know it was impossible, so they did it, wrote Mark Twain. And that is, without a doubt, one of the reasons why the participation of young people is so important to the future of our local communities, our countries, the European Union, and the world. Today, we are here to explore how we can strengthen youth engagement in local communities and ensure that young people are actively included in decision-making processes. Please give a warm round of applause for our host and opening speaker, Mr. Christian Nematz from the PiNA community.
Welcome everybody. I welcome everybody that you're here. I'm really happy that you came here in present. Also, a nice welcome to all of you that are watching on YouTube right now. I'm really happy. We are concluding our conference, our project. It is the final conference, something of the project Add Something Meaningful. The project that's lasted for 30 months, and it was co-founded by the Erasmus Plus program. We did a lot in this project. We did a lot. I'm Christian, like from PiNA. We are the lead partners, and we did a lot with our other partners from Finland, from France, from Italy. What it was the aim of the project was to engage young people, to create this bridge from young people to the municipality. To really start this conversation, to make a platform to engage together. And I think that we were successful in this. And for this reason today we will start with the talk of two professors, Tomáš Deželan and Howard Williamson. They will share with you why, in fact, it's important to talk about youth participation, to talk about youth engagement, what the municipality can do to come closer to the youth, and what youth organization can do to be this middleman between the youth and the municipalities or the institutions in general. Then we continue with a conversation about the practice. So, what was the main result of the IDEATHON, of the Add Something Meaningful project, was the methodology IDEATHON that we developed. We will talk more about that methodology later, but yeah, basically with this methodology we directly give the word to the youth. We give them the budget to create a project that they wish, so to make their ideas possible. And then we will finish with some idea about what the European Union is giving, what opportunities are the European Union giving to support more projects on youth participation, to support more projects that will give the voice to the youth. So thank you again to be here. I'm really happy, and I hope that you will learn a lot from this conference, and you will enjoy with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nemeth. And now, as you said, it's my pleasure to welcome to our stage two distinguished experts who will share their very important insights on a very important topic. Why it's so crucial to include young people with fresh ideas in decision-making processes. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tomáš Deželan, professor at the Faculty of Social Sciences, and our guest from the United Kingdom, Dr. Howard Williamson, professor of European Youth Policy at the University of South Wales. First, how are you? How do you feel here close to the sea?
I've been here once before, to exactly here. It's good to see young people here, and it's always a privilege for me to come to another country and learn about what you're trying to do and compare it with what we've tried to do back in the UK, for good and for bad. Tomáš invites me most years. I came to Slovenia first in 2003 and helped write the first national youth strategy for Slovenia with Dominic Chernak, the Youth Party Member of Parliament, years ago. And I've been a lot of times since. So to beautiful Lake Bled. You have the Duke of Edinburgh's Award in Slovenia. Has anybody done the International Award for Young People? Anybody in this room? Just out of curiosity.
Not yet.
I'm an international trustee of that, and I'm in Nigeria next week for a meeting of that. So, you know, this is a small country as well, 2 million people, and I come from a small country of 3 million people, so I often make comparisons between Slovenia and Wales as well about what you're doing for young people and what we're trying to do for young people. So thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
Dr. Deželan, we are very grateful that you brought here Professor Williams. Why is your collaboration so important?
Maybe it's not.
No, I mean, well, for many reasons, of course. I mean, we've been seeing each other, Howard and I, for quite some time, but we realized that we rarely actually have like a deeper exchange on different topics. So we were trying to actually, you know, like address this, you know, like the lack of, I guess, interaction in the previous years, but by having a more intense conversations now for the past, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years. And particularly, you know, like I also have a course on youth and politics at the University of Ljubljana, Faculty of Social Sciences. And obviously, who could be the better, you know, person to talk to than Howard, and obviously share his experience from the youth field, but also in general about the European youth policy, the way institutions work, and so on. So, of course, it's my personal privilege to have him here every year now, and hopefully this will continue. But also, it's a privilege for my students, as well as for the entire sector and community. And this is why I always want us to do something more, but the course and the lecture, because obviously I think we need to kind of nurture this kind of culture of debates, you know, like engagements also outside of the academic community, because I guess this is our duty, you know, like as academics, to kind of like spur debates as well as talks on different and difficult issues that need to be addressed.
Can I just say one more thing, because you know, looking at the people here, and I have this weird background. I never wanted to be an academic. I started as a volunteer youth worker, and I ran an open youth centre for 25 years, so not for 6 months, for 25 years, working with very ordinary young people who don't really participate in anything. And so I'm still very attached to local stuff. You're looking at the title of this event. And then slowly I moved into university life and eventually became a professor. But also I've worked at policy levels. In Wales we have our own Welsh government, which is responsible for most youth issues, housing, social services, education, health, and so on. And then I work in the UK government, and then in Brussels and Strasbourg, and then New York and Geneva with the UN. So I kind of work at lots of different levels and across lots of different areas, but around research, policy and practice. And that, I look back now and I think that's an amazing life experience to have had, and it's very, very unique. And but only now do I know it's unique. When I started, I didn't know it was going to be special or unusual, but that's the contribution that I make to these discussions.
Yeah, and if I may add, you know, like I had.
I really like that.
you just say that, you know.
No, I mean, my path is completely different, right? I entered like the academic field like in a traditional way, I would say, like as most of the academics do, you know, like through the studies and then, you know, like on joining the research team and so on. And at some point, and I've been doing like a lot of exciting projects also, you know, like with big impact factors and so on. But at some point I realized that like there's no impact there, you know, like, and my best publication, which was at that time really good, you know, like, and published in the best journal of the entire field, didn't impact anyone, you know, like, and it had like 60 downloads or something like that, and I've spent like 2 years in Edinburgh doing it, you know. So in that sense I felt I need to do more. So I started. No, I wasn't disappointed, but I was meant for bigger things, right? So in that sense I started doing way more work with international organizations and so on. So like the next thing I did was actually write a piece of paper that doesn't have my name, only in footnote, but it's still relevant for 1.3 billion people. And it's the OSCE document on like ministerial council conclusions for youth participation. So I said like 62 downloads versus 1.3 billion, it makes sense. So in that sense, I think we kind of met here, you know, like, and obviously from then on, we've been seeing each other at similar events, usually, you know, like invited as guests or participants. So I feel this is actually also why this is so important for us to have, you know, like academics of different paths, different experiences coming into the academic sphere in order to also indicate that there's actually also the relevant areas outside of the academia that actually have to be addressed by it, but at the same time that there are different paths of influencing the society as well as entering the academia.
So as you can see, we have here very amazing guests, so prepare your questions for the end of this conversation. Also all the watchers online. But now the first question for you, Mr. Williams. What's your view about the participation of young people? Is there a problem, or why is it important at all? And to whom?
Well, you know, a few years ago I started to do a lecture called "I'm Fed Up with Youth Participation." And I've always believed in involving young people. In my youth centre, I involved their voices, and I've always promoted young people to be part of discussions that affect their lives. But the reason I was fed up with it was that it became a kind of mantra at conferences. When there were no young people there, the way you scored the biggest round of applause was to say, why are there no young people at this event? Yes, yes. But the question then is why, what for, how, who do you involve? There's some key simple questions that need to be asked about youth participation that we've kind of lost. And I noticed that in your title here you've got meaningful. And people often say that some of these words, like citizenship, like community, like participation, are used by so many people in so many different ways that they've become meaningless. Nobody really knows what we're talking about. Are we talking about young people controlling decision making in the local area? I mean, this is your space, this is your community. You ought to be part of those debates, but you're not the only people who should be part of those debates. I mean, there's other groups who also live in this area. And the question is about trying to find sort of a meeting of the ways. And you have different kinds of views. And yeah, some young people cry, you know, tokenism as soon as they don't get their own way. Well, none of us get our own way. We all have to be involved in interdependent debates. So I think it's quite complicated territory. Thomas knows much more about it than I do. I've always tried to put it into practice. I have not written about it so much. I always remember just one little story. I had a group of very difficult young people who were skateboarders. They were brilliant skateboarders. If any of you have ever stood on a skateboard, you'll go sliding off in no time. My kids had skateboards for a while, and I tried to stand on them in the kitchen, and I was always on my arse, you know, I just went over. But these young people, you know, they also were dope smokers, and you know, they were having conflict with the police. And I suddenly thought, I'd been in Paris and I'd looked at rollerbladers going around Coca-Cola cans outside Notre Dame, and the Japanese tourists were soaking it up with beautiful cameras like yours, you know, click, 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 watching this performance by young people. So I got those young people, I said, let's go and talk to the architects department in the middle of the city. And let's try and create some open spaces for skateboarders so you can show off your talents. That's the way I was trying to always connect young people's interests with policy development, if you want to call it that, in the municipality. And I was constantly doing that with the police, with architects, with housing, and so on, so that young people were included in local space and not excluded from it, which is often what some people think is the answer. Get rid of these young people, they're too much of a problem. And I used to think, no, bring these young people in, they've got something to say and something to do and something to contribute. So that's the way I see it. There's many worries I have. I won't go into detail about them, but I think we've got lots of platforms for youth participation. The question is, what kinds of young people are sitting on those platforms? And I'll probably return to that.
Mm-hmm. Professor Dejelan, could you give us some examples of what active citizenship looks like among young people in Slovenia?
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting one. Yeah.
Why?
I mean, no, of course we have like young people that engage in, I would say, like traditional institutional politics for sure. we have them, they're active. We should not neglect that part. But of course, this is not the most attractive way of engagement, particularly not for younger generations, right? Even though we learn more and more that obviously also this, let's say, I won't say privileged, but I'll say like traditionally engaged young people are also developing mechanisms that actually are in sync with time as well as the development of the technology, and this is why we keep seeing also, you know, like the party youth wings and so on, some of them really up to date to the technology and taking advantage of this, you know, like new opportunities to address crowds that previously haven't been addressed, which is particularly important. It doesn't mean it's necessarily democratic, it can be also undemocratic, but they're successful at it, you know, like, and then it's something you can't deny, and we keep seeing that also when we look at our, I don't know, like election results, you know, like elected MPs, like MEPs and so on. So of course this is also like kind of a consequence of a different kind of engagement of young people in the institutional arena, but obviously there's way more outside, right? And in the outside of the institutional arena is something, I mean, this space is something that needs to be kind of harnessed more, you know, like by, of course, by political institutions, by municipalities, because this is the energy that in many ways is also more sincere, you know, like more spontaneous, but also informs more, you know, like, of course, communities, as well as could inform more policies about what are the concrete needs, what are the actually ambitions of like different well, groups of young people, but at the same time we need to be attentive to the fact that of course not everyone knows how to operate a smart device, you know, in a competent way, you know, like how like disinformation, misinformation campaigns can really trick young people as it can, or as they can, you know, like the elderly, you know, like so of course there are many traps, but at the same time, you know, like I'd say, you know, like it's time for, well, I would say particularly political institutions and then broader stakeholders in the community to actually learn as well as address, you know, these new patterns in order to kind of connect those groups more into society than they currently are, because this is why we tend to get this perception that they're not participating, and that, on the other hand, they have the perception that they're not listened to.
Mm-hmm. But you mentioned many different kind of mechanisms. What kind of?
Yeah, I mean, mechanisms, of course, it can be, of course, the platforms, and then obviously different innovations like concerning these platforms. But I would say, like, mostly it's actually like the ambition, the sincere ambition to learn about like the needs, grievances, the will, you know, like the ideas within the group, right? And it can be like very technologically backed up or very simple and basic. It's actually about listening, giving space, you know, like providing space, not guiding the process, you know, like being, in a way, willing to release power. And this is sometimes tough, because there's a huge possibility that you learn something about yourself that you don't like, you know, like, but that's part of the game, right? So it can be a very, you know, like hands-on approach to, you know, like managing a community, like or like some public spaces, but of course it can be also very advanced approach to like the use of like new platforms, new technologies, as well as in a way building, which has to be in sync with awareness raising and capacity building on how these platforms can also affect you negatively and the community negatively. Because what we keep seeing now, particularly due to the use of those platforms, is like the increased polarization and actually breakup of the societal tissue, right? So if you ask me what's the best approach, well, go out on the street and then start listening, start talking, start engaging people, and try to mix them up, you know, try to actually also kind of spur this social interaction that's more and more, you know, like kind of mediated by the platforms and by the, you know, like this echo chambers and cognitive consonance and so on.
Professor Williamson, when you look at youth participation across Europe, do you see the same patterns?
Well, before I come to that, I mean, you used three words in your opening words that I thought were important. You used the word engage, which is, of course, one of the key words of the current EU youth strategy, engage, connect, empower. Use the word engage. You also used the word bridges, and I think, you know, building bridges, which is part of the second European Youth Work Convention 10 years ago, bridges. You used the word platform, and Thomas has used the word platform a lot. What are the platforms on which young people should be involved to contribute to these discussions? And I think there is an issue about whether it should always be a democratic platform or whether it should be what I call a categorical platform. I mean, I don't want a lot of able-bodied young people who, however brilliantly and clever they are, to start telling me about disability policy. I want people who are blind, people who are in wheelchairs, people who are of that category that you're trying to do something for or with. And then the other word that Thomas used was spaces. And that was also the other key word in the 2015 European Youth Work Convention declaration, which was we need to create spaces for young people to hang around together, to associate together, and to have a voice together. So building spaces and building bridges, supporting bridges of connection for young people are important. Now, your question was about Europe. Is it a common story across Europe? Of course it's not. It's very, very different in different places within countries. I mean, you will have municipalities where there's a strong political commitment to youth participation, and they will have tried to develop a range of platforms. There are other in places where it's almost non-existent. For me, when I was young, we didn't have any platforms. So, you know, I've been sort of fighting for these platforms in the UK and in the rest of Europe for 40 years. And then I'm told, you know, you should shut up, you're too old to talk about young people. So, you know, there you go, you know, you get all this shit from young people, and you battle for them all your life. It hurts, sometimes that hurts. But we have developed quite a lot of good participative practice. In Australia, where I'm a visiting professor at Victoria University, which is the sort of leading university for youth work training in Australia, certainly in Victoria, part of South Australia, we did a discussion. It's online, and for those of you who are comfortable and confident reading English, it's called Approaches to Youth Participation in Youth and Community Work, a critical dialogue. And it's basically Australians discussing this issue, but I'm involved because I'm a kind of honorary Australian. And it's quite good because it's not an easy thing to do. The European Youth Forum have had two mantras over the years. One is nothing about us without us, and the other is youth-less policy is use-less policy. Those are their two sort of strap lines. And quite clearly, we don't want societies developing stuff for young people, as Thomas says, with technological change, artificial intelligence. All these things are coming in that people like me are having to learn about, but you lot are living it. And we've got to hear the way you are responding to those kinds of pressures and anxieties around climate and cost of living and fear of missing out and being on your phones in the middle of the night and so on. You know, mobile phones didn't exist when I was your age, so you know, we lived a very different kind of life as young people, but also some commonalities. So we have to try and think about what are the threads of continuity over time, and what are the new things that young people are facing, and how do communities, families, politicians, youth work projects, community work projects, higher education, all of these, how do they respond to those new realities for young people? And they are still very different in different parts of Europe. So we don't want a one-size-fits-all participation policy for Europe, because if you're in Armenia, it's going to be extremely different from if you're living in Finland. And if you're living in Helsinki, it's going to be dramatically different from if you're living in Oulu, for example.
You both mentioned common spaces for young people, but what's your opinion? Why local authorities don't build those common spaces? Are they afraid of young people, of their voice, of their opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how we define like this common space, right? Like, of course, as I said before, it can be a physical space, right? And obviously the physical space has to have some features, and then of course it's you need to have different features if you're building a space for, I don't know, like young people to freely interact, or if you want like a public authority to learn something from young people in those spaces. So of course, like the needs are there. I mean, there are different needs that actually then inform, you know, also the conditions that have to be met. But also, you know, like the online space is something that actually is quite important as well, because like as we learn, you know, like the online spaces are not so democratic as we once thought they will be, you know, like, and then there are loads of traps, and of course there's also like the capacity and competence of, you know, like, well, local administrations or like public authorities to engage like young people online and so on. So when it comes to online, there's a lot of, you know, like there's a lot of issues related to capacity, because they simply don't know how young people actually interact, as well as issues with control, because they don't want to release control, and this kind of space is not acceptable for young people, right? As well as it's not clear what they want out of it, you know, like, do they really want to just sense what the problems are, or do they want to co-create something, or like what's behind it? You know, like, of course nobody wants to be abused, so nobody will get tricked into doing something if he or she doesn't know what's behind it, right? So like very clear, you know, like transparent way of communication, as well as, you know, like what's behind it, how the platform, you know, like operates and so on, is very important. So I think there are loads of factors that contribute to this distrust of anyone, not just young people. I don't trust online platforms either, particularly when the governments are doing them, you know, like. So in that sense, I think that's an issue. In terms of physical spaces, you know, like, of course, you know, like, are we doing it for ourselves or for them? You know, like, and then even this divide is a problematic divide for us and them. And, you know, like, there's no us and them. You know, like, we're part of this community, right? So it has to start from the start. You know, like, how we define those spaces. What will those spaces look like? Where will they be? What purpose will they serve? You know, like, it's a very difficult process to actually get it right. You know, like, and of course, like the most, you know, like, I don't know, like educated as well as, you know, like politically savvy young people will be alert, you know, and then will inform everyone about every mistake you're making when you're trying to design the process. And we're making those mistakes all the time, because it's a very difficult process. So in that sense, you know, like, I feel, you know, also that sometimes it's just too much work, and there's so many opportunities to slip, that if you're not really pushed into it, you would rather not do it, you know. So you allocate this, you know, like this I don't know, like programmatic goal or this ambition to someone else, someone outside of the municipality, or some agent that won't affect your credibility, your, you know, like your competence, your, like, in a way, perception, like the way you're perceived in a society, because it's simply a really hard work. And this is, I think, the main reason why, well, authorities as well as like policymakers don't wanna gamble, you know, they don't want to gamble their own political careers or in a way credibility of institutions on the processes. They don't know whether they'll succeed, you know, whether the processes will succeed, right? So this is why we learn more and more about, you know, like good stories, positive stories, like with impactful results, but they're like, these stories are most of the times very organic, like bottom up, you know, like I mean, they originate from some bottom up processes, energies, and so on, and they're rarely, you know, like managed by a public authority, by a central authority, by someone who needs, you know, like I don't know, like ideas to address and then also results that he or she can then report when they're campaigning for the next term and so on.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a different story in the UK. I mean, again, I'd be interested to hear where you lot hang out or hang around, and whether it's in people's houses or whether that's on the street or by a petrol station or a bus stop, or young people will find somewhere to socialise together, online or offline. I mean, that's a reality. The question is whether the state, the local state, the national state should provide those things, or whether it should be provided privately. We do it for children, and adults do it for themselves, sporting clubs, social clubs, and so on. So why should we not sort of support young people having their own social space of some kind? The UK, the England story is terrible in the last 10 years. You know, they've chopped 1/3 of youth provision in England because it's too expensive. And you have to put this in the wider policy context. When municipalities have got to deal with child protection, and they've got to deal with social care of the elderly, they've got to deal with vulnerable adults. These are the legal responsibilities that municipalities have. Even those municipalities that believe they should be doing something for young people, it's not a legal requirement and they haven't got any money to do it. So there are those kind of real politic issues about making provision for young people. The question, when you do have space, a building of some kind, is then what do you do in it? Who decides? There's a lot of documents that talk about everything should be youth-led. I'm an opponent of that. I mean, Mata and I were talking briefly about experiential learning through the outdoors. I mean, young people won't necessarily, some young people won't necessarily, I really want to go into the outdoors and do some hiking. You know, no, I don't. You know, I live in the city. I'm scared of the rain and the cold and rucksacks and camping and so on. I mean, I think youth work people should be broadening young people's horizons. I have a very crude sort of philosophy of youth work, which is an arm around the shoulder and a kick up the arse. It's a kind of, you know, try this out once, give it a go. And the reason I'm kicking you up the backside is because I actually care enough about you to try encourage you to do these things. And if you don't like it, you don't ever have to do it again. I'm scared of heights, personally. I did a rock climbing weekend. I learned how to abseil and rock climb. I was terrified every moment of it. And I never want to do it again, but I have done it once. So at least I can say I've tried and given it a go. And I try to say to all young people, give it a go, give it a try. So part of the space is for practitioners, professionals or volunteers, but professional people working with young people to open up those possibilities, those opportunities and experiences, but also making sure that it's not so structured, so framed that young people get pissed off with it because, you know, I didn't come to be organised. I'm organised at home, I'm organised at work, I'm organised at school. I want some free space to do something with my friends and meet new friends and so on and so forth. So it's quite a delicate sort of set of dilemmas about how much intervention should take place if you create these spaces. And then you've got the online world, of course, which, I mean, surveys now are showing that young people really regret the fact that they have smartphones. They look back and think it would be lovely not to have to be looking at my phone all the time. That's what surveys are telling us. So, with youth workers or teachers, educators, social pedagogues, you can call them many different things, need to be supporting, listening to young people about their anxiety, supporting them in terms of how they're coping with that. It was always said in the UK from 40 years ago that the 5 A's, all words beginning with A, of youth work generally were association, activities, advice, advocacy, and autonomy. Giving young people power, Thomas's point about power to decide for themselves about what they wanted to do. And that gives them, that's part of the social pedagogy thing about giving young people responsibility in local communities to contribute in their own particular way from their own perspective. So I think it's all of those things, but without the space, young people don't have the opportunity to do that.
If I may add to this, because this part I didn't address in my previous intervention, and it's true, and then we also have surveys actually proving about what kind of spaces in your local environment, like when we talk about physical spaces, right? We can talk about virtual as well, but when we look at the physical spaces, there are some spaces that are more relevant than others, and it's not just like the supermarkets where young people like to hang out, or like this big beasts of chains of stores that we keep developing, because we think they're good for people. I don't know for what reason, but anyway. So they can't see it's fog outside, I guess, because we expected the sun. Yeah, because I was explaining to him how Ljubljana is really depressing during the winter time, and how we're gonna see the sun. But anyway, we have surveys about this, and it's actually educational spaces, and it's formal and non-formal educational spaces that really matter, and it's actually sports infrastructure, and it can be private or public, we do all know the surveys, and we usually kind of mock, those surveys in terms of, well, the most attractive thing for young people to engage in our fitness clubs, and so on. Yeah? But it's not just that. Sometimes it's only the fitness club that actually exists there, or the pub. So of course you don't want to, you have to choose, and of course it's more acceptable also by your parents to actually choose a fitness club, even though you would rather have something more open, more in a way less structured. But anyway, this is it. So when we look at those spaces, it's actually educational spaces. It's schools, and then of course other formal education environments that allow also this unstructured or less structured activities. So it's okay for kids to actually spend time at the school premises. You don't need to kick them out at 1 o'clock because there's no, no school hours anymore, and then only till 5th grade they're allowed to be there till 4:30, because then they have till that period, the school has to take care of the safety of the kid, right? So it's actually provision of those kind of spaces that can actually then perform the role of public, civic spaces. And it's schools as well as, and here we tap into actually in Slovenian case, municipalities do have a very strong role in the youth policy. Of course it's not recognized, which is a complete fault of the national authorities. It's not properly funded, at least not in terms of earmarking the money for the infrastructure, for the programs. It's just the entire SAC also includes this, but obviously you have other priorities, that are also more prominent, also in a way more problematic to most of the society. So obviously the municipalities are concentrating on that, but at the same time they're not investing enough into youth centers, different infrastructure that different associations, different clubs, different non-formal groups could then use in order to, you know, like fill that gap. So basically, even though those spaces are the most populous public spaces that actually do have this potential of harnessing youth engagement, youth participation, that they aren't properly managed and there aren't in a way attended to enough by the budget, by the proper investment from local authorities. And then we have also like completely open spaces, you know, like streets and so on, and there we also have to, and there also, you know, like also the public authorities have to take care of for sure for safety and so on. And then we also get, you know, like the private spaces and shopping malls and so on. I mean, they're important, but they're by far not as important as we might think, or as we stereotypically kind of assume when we look at young people and their cell phones, and then kind of, you know, like this perception that they're only interested in like brands and then different stuff happening, you know, like online or in the Kardashian shows, you know.
Maybe we should ask our audience, but on the other hand, I think trust in institutions among young people is often quite low. What's your opinion? Often. Am I wrong?
Well, just a small thing. A year ago in Strasbourg, there was a debate on developing youth work in Ukraine in times of war. And I was on a panel with all the others were Ukrainian. And I've done a lot of stuff with Zelensky's office and in Ukraine over some years, prior to the full-scale invasion and since. But I read something out. I read a 5-point plan for young people, and I'm not going to talk to you about all 5 things, but one of them was about making use of resources in the local area. And that included schools, but it included other kinds of buildings and other possibilities. And it included the training of youth workers and the involvement of young people, not just those in youth organizations. And there were a couple of other things. But that was from a document written in November 1939. And when I read it out a week ago in Brussels, the person sitting next to me said, "Don't you mean 1993? And I said, "No, I mean 1939, 86 years ago." And it was a document published by the Ministry of Education in the United Kingdom called "In the Service of Youth." And the final paragraph was saying that even municipalities facing all the challenges of the outbreak of war, which had started, the Second World War had started in September 1939, young people need this kind of support. So it's not new, any of this stuff. The point about trust is that there are constant promises extended to young people that are broken by adults. Again, I live in a country where before every general election, going back to the 1970s when I was first involved in this sort of stuff, every single, just before the election, there are politicians saying, "And when we get into power, we will do this, that, and the other for young people." And then they get into power and they don't. So I'm not surprised that there's a deep lack of trust amongst young people in the systems. There's also the generational contract. My generation, I told you about my own history, part-time jobs, part-time youth work, part-time academic, pretty precarious employment for a man over that period. And I say a man deliberately because women did tend to work part-time, but when I started doing part-time jobs, everybody thought I was mad. It just didn't exist, these kind of combinations. And yet, you know, at my age, I've got a decent pension. I own my own house. I've got quite a lot of. I'm not wealthy, but I'm okay. And then generational transfer. You know, your generation are facing all kinds of challenges. And I've written a book about it, not published yet, but it's starts with democracy, shrinking civic space, talks about the climate emergency, talks about conflict in Europe, in Ukraine, for the first time. I mean, you've had the Balkan conflicts, so it's, you know, people forget about that in Western Europe, about the former Yugoslavia and what happened here, not in Slovenia so much. So, you know, it has been present in your lives, but not as prominent as it is right now. And then there's technology, and then there's identity issues. There's a whole set of things that are affecting you deeply that my generation are not paying enough attention to. And we should, you know, I mentioned Australia. There's two groups of young people in Australia, I mean, and in Europe, but we haven't done research on this, in very precarious circumstances, into their 20s, into their late 20s, working in casual employment and so on. And I say there's two groups because one group are still experimenting with where they're going with their lives because they've got secure parents and grandparental money that could come to them and will come to them and could come to them if things get tough. And this other group are working in that scenario because they have no parental or grandparental resources behind them, and it's the only way they can get by. And they look exactly the same from a researcher's perspective, unless you do some real deep qualitative work to find out how the social infrastructure is and the economic infrastructure is affecting their lives. So I am not surprised that there's a lack of trust, and I think the big issue in our public policy is how we rebuild that trust. We make promises that we do keep, and we have a different form of generational asset transfer to ensure that we invest in young people in the best way we possibly can. That's my view.
So what's your advice for the government, for the local authorities, stop breaking the promises?
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember, like one research I did in 2015, and it included also a lot of UK youth wings. So, for example, the Welsh one with the Welsh name, what's the party?
The political party,
yeah, exactly. This one, and the SNP, and also Cornish party as well.
Yeah.
One. But the response I was getting was all the time broken promise. The broken promise. Everyone said that, and to me, of course, it's part of also like this environment and terminology and everything. But it resonated. You know, the broken promise, and you know, like it's the broken promise that affects, you know, trust, but not just trust in the political institutions. We all know Slovenians never trusted political institutions much anytime throughout our, you know, like period of independence, all throughout our throughout the period that we measure that trust. But we did trust some other institutions, and we don't anymore. And we also did trust more other people, other Slovenians, other community members, and we don't anymore. And that's the case also with young people. So basically, you know, like it is an issue. It's a big issue because we don't trust each other anymore. And then that has changed. And then also we don't trust so much, even though this part of trust is kind of gradually growing back. You know, like the institutions that were always kind of a pillars of a society, like for example, firemen associations and these kind, like CSO, that are actually really contributing to the society without like getting something big in return, right? So in that sense, and it's difficult to address this because basically there's no, you know, there's no silver bullet, there's no like quick fix. So I think what the authorities should do is actually, you know, like seek for the low-hanging fruits. Because basically you need to do the little stuff before you do the big ones. And the low-hanging fruits will actually enable others to actually see the difference and see that there is, you know, like a sincere motivation, if there is a sincere motivation, to actually do something, but also demonstrate that there is willingness, you know, like, so actually it's a gradual, slow process, but I think this is a strategy that could pay off, as well as, you know, like then invest into telling people that you did that, you know, like it didn't happen by itself, you did that, and it's usually we did that, you know, like, and this is something that would generate then ownership of it. So basically people like to own good things, you know, like, and people like to be a part of something that actually contributed to something. And then this is actually also a matter of youth participation and how it can be harnessed. Not you tell me or you engage and I'll do something for you. Let's do something together, you know, and let's do things that can be done like with a stroke of a hand, but still we need it, you know, like, so it's actually learning about, you know, like how, or like what kind of small steps can be taken in order to, in a way, get this at least a bit of trust back in order to do bigger things.
You know, just so we don't forget it and try to be a bit more positive. I'm pretty critical most of the time. But you know, this project that we're sort of celebrating here today is an Erasmus Plus project. It's European Union funded, and it is important for people to know that there is, at least in theory, a commitment within the European Commission to youth mainstreaming. That's the big word in the European Commission. Everybody's struggling to understand exactly what that means. But it is about trying to work out a wider canvas of policy in Europe affects young people sometimes very deliberately and sometimes accidentally, and to check it out and see whether it's got adverse, unintended consequences for young people. So that's the idea of mainstreaming. And in Strasbourg, in the Council of Europe, they've got a commitment to ensuring, embedding a youth perspective, that's their word, perspective, in the work, all the work of the Council of Europe, whether that's anti-corruption work, human rights work, whatever it may be, to ensure that a youth perspective is right there, is very present. So it's, both of them are paper documents that are really talking about improving the quality of youth participation, making it more meaningful. That's the other big buzzy word. Of course, I, as an academic and as a practitioner, really, I remain sometimes rather wary of paper documents. I want to see them translated into reality. So we will have to wait and see whether this really does come out in practice more deeply. But I want people to know that at least the two European institutions in the last 2 years have made a bigger commitment to mainstreaming and perspective.
I'm looking at my screen, but I don't want to be impolite. That's because we got a question from Greece, from Athens. I think public youth spaces are really important. There is a need for spaces for experimentation, community, and connection. But the question is, because there's still a lot to do on this topic, how, in your experience, we can advocate and pressure politicians?
Well, it's a very, very good question, and a very difficult question to answer. There are, if you like, formal channels of lobbying politicians and engaging with politicians. My own experience is that it's very hit and miss, it's very unpredictable, and it's usually more likely to be successful through sort of back channel contacts and communications. I've been very lucky I shouldn't say this too publicly because they'll probably close all the doors, but many doors have been opened by almost accidental contacts with people who became politicians, and I'd known them when they were younger, and they could keep in touch with me. I've been able to sort of influence quite a lot of policy development through those routes, but I have to also admit that sometimes a minister that I've known and worked with, suddenly they move on to another role, or they stop being a minister at all. A new minister comes in, doesn't know me, the door closes, all that effort is gone to waste. We were talking in the car coming here about citizenship and the citizenship curriculum in the United Kingdom. A friend of mine spent 4 years lobbying, reaching the Prime Minister of the time, David Cameron, to put personal, social and health education, citizenship education, inside the formal school curriculum. And David Cameron said, once we've got the Brexit vote out of the way, that will be my priority. Unfortunately, the Brexit vote went against David Cameron and he resigned. And the next Prime Minister, Theresa May, didn't know anything about this promise. And nothing happened. So you can work for years and years and years to no effect whatsoever. Conversely, if the political will is there, if it's bubbling around and you're available to help, things can happen very quickly. We spent nearly £3 billion on welfare to work, moving unemployed young people into the labour market in 1997-98 when Tony Blair was the Prime Minister, because Tony was very keen to make this happen. It was part of their manifesto commitment, and literally within 4 months we had devised a national programme and we had the money to deliver it. So it can happen very fast. Sometimes it takes a very long time and sometimes nothing ever happens. And the question from Greece shows how erratic and unpredictable the whole policy making process is. There are no, you use the word magic bullet and those kinds of ideas. There are no magic bullets. You've sometimes just got to keep working away as you can. One last comment about that, it's a personal story that about chance. The first youth minister under Tony Blair in 1997 was a Welsh member of Parliament. He made a speech. He said, youth work was the can't do, won't do service. I read a report of his speech. Now that member of Parliament lived in the same street as me. I lived at number 43, he lived at number 30. I'd seen him a couple of times speaking at 1 or 2 events, but I didn't know him. But I was so angry about this thing I read in the paper, I went and knocked on his door. What the hell are you saying that for? Where did you get that from? And I had a cup of tea with him and an argument with him. But then I said, can I help you to understand youth work a bit better? And he welcomed that. Because youth work was a tiny fragment of his overall responsibilities for the careers service and training and enterprise and youth unemployment and this, that and the other. So I helped him. And for a year, I helped him quite a lot. Sometimes I seized the moment. I might have read that article and thought, a ministerial speech, leave it alone. But a Saturday morning, I went up and knocked on his door and I was invited in. He might have told me to clear off. But that built a friendship and a connection to the political establishment, which has continued actually right up to this day through different routes.
Professor Dejenan, did you knock?
No,
I don't.
It's just break doors.
But doors open, doors shutting.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are different strategies, and then obviously there are also different traditions. In some environments, that's actually something that is desirable, but in others, it's actually quite difficult. But if I relate to a story I know from Slovenian, one Slovenian municipality. A lot of times, actually, municipalities are willing to listen. They just no one knocks. And I remember because I was part of one. I delivered some training for local civil servants at one point in my life, and we talked about youth participation and so on. And one of the administrators said, "Well, we have a budget. I kind of have an idea about what young people need, what young people would like to see, but nobody kind of comes in, and then knocks on the door and actually tells us, I said, do you go outside? And he said, no, but our doors are always open. but nobody comes in, you know, like if you're a 14 or 15-year-old, you won't come into a municipal office telling some administrator, you know, what you want. That's simply not the way you actually interact with, but and particularly not as a 14-year-old to public authorities, right? So, I would say, you know, like not all politicians as well as policymakers are bad. In fact, most of them are good, you know, like, and obviously there's just this communication gap between us and them in this case, you know, like, and someone has to bridge it. And if they're not doing it, because they can be stressed out about some other things and so on, then it's on us to do it. Of course, it may be a bad time, you know, and then you have to seize the window of opportunity. And this is a concept in public policy, you know, like you seize a window of opportunity that emerges usually if there's an election race coming up, or if there's a problem and you need a positive, you know, like story and so on. So you need to seize the opportunity, that's true. But most of the time they're willing to listen, and they're willing to actually also engage in initiatives that for sure generate good results, you know, like, so you need to be meticulous enough to collect those results in order for when the opportunity comes to actually deliver also evidence, because this is something they need to convince the others, you know, who are actually saying this is bullshit. No, it's true, it works, and it's here, and we have people to prove it, right? So it's actually a process, an interaction. You need to do your own work and wait for the opportunity, but sometimes the opportunity is already there. You just need to, I would say, yeah, knock the doors, because as I said, you know, most of the times we don't really know that there's something out there that can help us, and it goes for, well, the organizations delivering great work, as well as administrators doing their own job, and then simply being too frustrated about everything they have to do, I don't know, till 4 or 5 o'clock when they have to go home and pick up kids and then do like the private stuff all over again.
Prepare your questions. I have the last one. When it comes to informal learning, volunteering, youth exchanges, community projects, what is the role for youth work in this?
Well, I don't like the term informal learning. In a professional debate, we all learn informally all the time. I mean, that's what happens every second of our lives. We are learning informally. I use a rather clunky term called non-formal education and learning. And I have done a little, you can actually look it up on YouTube, it's a 4-minute and 4-second video done by the World Scouting Movement, for the World Scouting Movement, where they've put some captions on it. And my son did it on his iPhone, whatever it was at the time, iPhone 6 or 8, not 16. And it basically says that on the one hand we've got schools, formal education, and some formal education starts to use non-formal methodologies. So let's not get into a battleground with schools, that youth work is better and schools are crap. When I was parliamentary advisor on education in the UK, so for the whole of the United Kingdom, around curriculum development and curriculum reform, I did not want non-formal education achievements to be part of school league tables, because I did not want young people to have outdoor education certificates which schools would use to add up the things to get them to a higher position when these kids couldn't read or write. I wanted young people to be as close to formal learning as possible. And I always argued non-formal learning is a supplement, not a substitute for formal education. So on the one hand, you've got schools, a sort of permeable boundary there, and then you've got youth work. And youth work can stretch all the way from being quite directional, like teachers. I mean, I don't want young people taking a load of drugs and then how did you feel about it, you know, and what was the experience like? I want to say, you know, don't sniff lighter fuel because it might kill you the first time you do. And that did happen to one young man in my youth centre, so that's a very real experience of mine. So sometimes pretty much like teachers. I am a professionally, nationally qualified youth worker, and sometimes I know that I've behaved quite like a teacher. But also, over here, we do have young people informally learning, and my job there is to help them understand how that informal learning can be used in a much wider variety of things in their lives. So I'm facilitating their non-formal learning. So I'm a non-formal educator here, and there's a sliding scale to being a facilitator of non-formal learning through the community learning that those young people have achieved through their friends, through their communities, through their sporting activities, through their music, whatever it might be. And it's a big, big space. And youth workers, the last thing I'll say about youth work is I think youth work is a bit like being a jazz musician, a saxophone player. That we think, lots of people out there think youth work is a kind of casual thing. You kind of just sort of, you just do it spontaneously. Yes, you do it spontaneously, but you do it well if you have built a body of experience. The jazz musician, the saxophone player who leaps on a stage and jams in with the band, hasn't just picked up a saxophone from the shop earlier that day and then suddenly they're brilliant. They practiced and practiced and practiced, and they know how to respond, they know how to fill in the gaps, they know when to be silent. And good youth workers are like that. Good youth workers have built experience themselves to know when to intervene, when not to intervene, when to facilitate non-formal learning, when to instruct, when to guide, when to back off, when to support, when to advocate. And so good youth, I'm a deep, deep, deep believer in youth work. I think good youth work can make a dramatic difference to a lot of young people's lives. But I also think we lack the courage to say there's a lot of shitty youth work going on in Europe by well-intended volunteers often, but they don't really know what they're doing, and it's counterproductive. And the last thing I will say here is that politicians always want to know what the output is, what the outcomes are, what the impact is of what you've done. And now, I don't necessarily believe that everything has to be measured for impact, certainly over short periods of time. We know that good interventions in young people's lives are likely to produce good outcomes. It makes them think, it slows them down, it helps them reflect, those sorts of things. But we don't know when it's going to kick in as an impact. We don't know how long it might take. I'm still in touch with former youth club members who are aged 50 and 60. And they will still tell me on Facebook and stuff, you know, the old person's social media, Facebook, but it's a great way of keeping in touch with my former youth club members. Many of them will say, do you remember when I was 15 you did that, or that happened, or that happened? Well, and then they proceed to tell me a story when they're 45 about family life, or about work, or some relationships with friends, or things that they'd learned in the youth work setting. But I could never have predicted. I couldn't say, well, you were doing this now because that will happen to you then. But if we do bad interventions with young people, which some of us do, it's quite likely to produce bad outcomes. So that's why I'm a believer in the education and training of youth workers, to help equip them with the basic musical knowledge to be able to play the saxophone well in the improvised jazz performance when they need to. That's the way I see it, anyway.
Kind of forgot what the question was.
That's about youth work.
About volunteering and so on.
Informal education.
Yeah. I mean, right now we're doing a project with Professor Vukovic and then colleagues from University of Maribor, Glauric and Natterer. And then, of course, also a professor from Faculty of Social Work in Ljubljana, Alenka Grill. And we're actually looking at the infrastructure available, as well as like the professional development opportunities of youth workers here, right? And it's exactly as Howard said, you know, like, of course you need to be, I mean, of course, like our goal, and it's also European goal, professionalization of youth work, yeah? I mean, we see it everywhere, you know, like, I mean, our national goal, that's clearly our national goal, and I agree with it, I support it. It's like very frequently expressed or exposed by also many, you know, representatives of, public authorities, you know, like stakeholders in the sector. But, you know, like, we have this, you know, like elephant in the room, which is like the excellence or like the actual capacity of youth workers to do their job right, you know, because it's not every work of youth worker quality youth work. And obviously when we're speaking to youth workers with like 20, 30 years of experience, they're also quite critical about some of their colleagues, as well as they're quite realistic about their own capacity and what they need, you know, like, and we're simply not listening to them. I mean, we are, you know, like we are, and then luckily they're quite honest, sometimes even more honest that we can digest, you know, like, but at the same time, you know, like, we are simply not addressing the issue, the problem that we're supposed to, you know, like, and the issue that is already a national priority. So we're not taking it seriously. We have a strategy, you know, the national program. We have a very clear strategic priority. We have a special bond process group, or whatever, like the group that implements the European Youth Work Agenda, but we're simply not taking it seriously. And like, I'm gonna use the words of one of those youth workers who said, like, you know, like, it's simply not enough to allow me to talk to my peers if we all know that we lack some capacity that we all want to get in order to address our daily work or daily issues when dealing with like different groups that they're actually working with. And this is what she said, and literally she said that. And because like last week, I think there was an information session on the forthcoming call financed by the European Social Fund on professionalization of youth workers. So basically on different trainings for professional development of youth workers. And she said, like, if that's the way the government foresees how we will professionalize, then I'll cry, you know. And then, and this is the message. We have the need. We have a strategic priority that's widely accepted. Now we have the money, and we're still gonna screw up, you know. So we're not all doing our job properly, even though we know that the quality youth work is not just a word, you know, like it's not just a buzzword, it's actually something we really need to address, and we're not doing it. So this is why I think it's crazy important, but we're not taking it seriously enough, even though we've actually secured some really ground conditions, because we have the money, you know, like usually there's no money there. Here we have the money, but we're still not doing our work.
And now, dear audience, it's time for you, for your questions. Please just raise your hands and the stage is yours.
If they've got all the smiles come now.
Yeah, please.
I maybe wanted to ask you, what is your opinion as long-time youth workers based on the gender gap among youth as general in participation? Because when you look at this classroom, also
I was very conscious of that.
Yes.
Yeah, good question.
So it's interesting for me. I mean, I read some research that there is like some sort of a divisions in different opinions amongst males and females. So I want to hear what is your experience with that.
Well, you're right about this room. You're absolutely, and I was very alert to that. I mean, we're obviously not just dealing with gender, we're dealing with class, we're dealing with ethnicity. I certainly am very aware, having grown up in very multicultural areas in England and Wales, that many events I go to in Europe remain incredibly white. But other subgroups of young people, LGBTQ plus young people, rural young people, do tend to get some form of representation. So not bad in that respect. I think there is a risk of young women starting to, is it a risk? That might be the wrong word, but the domination of young women and fewer young men getting involved. And I tend to work with young people who have never been members of any youth organisations, are never members of any kind of platform or youth council or anything like that. They hang around on the streets, they play football, and increasingly girls play football as well. So I'm involved in a club which has a whole series of age groups of girls and women's teams. So I talk to the young men and young women there, and they're not interested in participating in any of these things at all. And I used to chair the Youth Crime Prevention Committee for England and Wales, so I was always in and out of prisons, not because I was convicted, but I was going and sitting in cells talking to young people who had committed offences serious enough to merit custodial sentences, and their voice never gets heard either. And that's why I'm a great believer in categorical representation. So, you know, if we're talking about the safety of girls and young women, let's have lots of girls and young women telling us their story. But if we're interested in racism, let's make sure we've got a decent representation of young people from ethnic minorities. And so sometimes I'm a kind of anti-democratic advocate for youth participation, which goes down like a lead balloon in the European Youth Forum. You know, we are the democratic voice of young people in Europe, they proclaim. You know, we represent all the national youth councils and all the transnational sectoral and issue-based youth organisations. And I say that's great. You know, we need that democratic voice of young people, but we also need a categorical voice of young people, because my research and practice knowledge of young people is often incredibly different, very, very, very different from the views and perspectives that I hear from the established youth organisations. So it's, I don't know whether that deals with your question, but I was trying to broaden the question out beyond gender, because I think it's a more complicated mosaic than that.
Yeah.
You would like to add something?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting observation. Of course, like, I mean, the representation of both genders in this room is clear, you know, like in what way who's represented, but, you know, like, I never felt, you know, like, this is an observation that is more valid for, like, social science and humanistic formal education institutions, primarily higher education institutions, than youth work, I would say. You know, this is a typical example of the social science faculty or faculty in the area of humanities, where you have, like, and I come from one of those, where you have like 70-30. If you go towards humanities, you can even get to a higher degree of female students and less male students. And obviously, of course, I'm a political scientist. I actually did also some research as well as taught on gender and representation. This actually affects power. Yeah. So even though there's more and more women in those environments, they're actually losing power, because particularly the engineering and natural sciences institutions are actually looking at them then as less relevant, because they're actually more populated by women. So it's actually an interesting dynamics where basically, because of those processes, like, these institutions are portrayed as less powerful. Yeah, and then this is where the mechanisms of, you know, like this gender inequality and everything are actually popping up. But I would say for the youth work, I didn't have this impression, particularly not for the youth work in Slovenia. Yeah, let's be clear. I mean, of course, loads of environments where youth work is practiced in Slovenia are actually international youth work environments. But in general, you know, like from my perspective or my view of things is that there is certainly not a big gender gap, if it is a gender gap there, but I would actually also kind of indicate a relevant conceptual element here. We're talking about how I said categorical representation, I would say descriptive representation. So if I'm a male, how many males are here? So am I represented or not, right? So this is, of course, particularly when we're actually dealing with deprivileged groups, this is very important. Yeah, and we have loads of literature when we talk about like minorities and so on, that descriptive representation is very important. But when we talk about, you know, in this case or in this environment about gender, it's also a matter of substantive representation, which would mean are the ideas, are the grievances, are the interests of, like, for example, young women here represented or not. And this sometimes doesn't have a direct connection with the number of young women in the room, because still, if you look at this, who are the ones who are speaking? It's two older men, yeah? So I'm not at all, but I'm not that young either, you know. Like so here you can see a message, right? Even though like the descriptive works in favor of, you know, young women, we're still the ones who are talking and you're listening. So this is the power relation. So in that sense, I never felt that youth work is actually affected by that, because the methodologies, also because of the principles, and I would say the basic rules of operation, at least in the environments I experienced. I'm not a youth worker. I actually observe, I do a lot of research on youth work, on youth workers and so on, but I'm not a youth worker. And from this external point of view, I would say that a lot of other places and spaces suffer from way higher levels of gender gap or gender representation than youth work.
And talking about gender gap, Christian.
I would just a short comment to add to this. We were preparing a project about engaging young women in the participatory processes or the decision-making processes. And we checked some researches, and the last research on youth 2024, we were talking about trust before, and now about engagement. This research is showing that the trust in the institution, in politics, is increasing, and the engagement is increasing between young men that have conservative thoughts. So added to that, the NGO sector, especially like we were doing the research in the Western Balkans, it is really feminine. But meanwhile, the politics are becoming, the youth right-wingers are becoming more and more politically active. And here it's another division that will be shown in the future.
Yeah. Just a short note on what he just said. Like before I said there are people that are actually engaging, right? But that's not necessarily a democratic type of engagement, right? And then he's actually saying exactly that, right? So we can engage, you know, like, and then at one point when I was writing a revision of the, revised guidelines for the charter or the Council of Europe Charter, on participation. Exactly. I had a thing called, I had an item there, kind of like a guideline, saying all participation is good, right? And then it originated from discussions we've had like 10 years ago within the forum, within the OSCE, and then different forums with young leaders and so on. At that point, it was actually Clementina who noticed this, and she said, no, not all
She's
participation.
the head of youth
Yeah.
policy in the council.
Exactly, exactly. And this was the first time I said, like, you're actually right? Because if basically, you know, like you're just, you know, triggered and you don't do the thought process before, and you're not informed, and you're not properly, you know, like you're not educated enough to actually understand what you're like deciding on, and then how the process works, and whether you're tricked or not, then maybe it would be better if you just wouldn't participate, right? And I think this is the situation where we're going to be talking more and more, because people get triggered, people get, in a way, engaged because of some emotional responses. So basically they're tricked because of fear, because of frustration, whatever. And they're not making an informed choice. They're actually just supporting a choice of someone else who's not sharing the same democratic vision of our societies as we are.
And to conclude our conversation, I have to read another topic online. How does the financial security of the country reflects on participation, youth participation?
How does the financial security of the country?
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means.
The resources.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's for me there's lots of levels of youth participation, and you know, I used to when I used to teach and speak about youth work practice, I used to say that I always tried to support the minority of one. The unusual young person who came into my youth centre who liked different sorts of music. If you had a democratic vote to what sort of music are you going to play tonight, this was in the days of, you know, sound systems and double decks and records and vinyl and all of those sorts of things, that young person would never get their music played. And I used to defend their position, and then these go, I thought you were democratic, well, you know, majority. And I said, I don't want the tyranny of the majority in this youth centre. I want to represent some minority views. So there's a lot of youth participation practice that doesn't cost anything. It's about relations. It's about, I mean, youth work is often talked about, the fundamentals of youth work are about building trusted relationships with young people. And it actually doesn't matter how old you are, and I say that very deliberately. Because I remember walking into my old youth centre as a volunteer the first day I walked in, and there was a woman smoking a cigarette running the coffee bar who was ancient because she was about 40. And I was 25 or something. And she was majestic. She was a factory worker. She had no skills. She had no training as a youth worker. But she was brilliant at building trust and relationships with young people. And the coffee bar was always surrounded by young people talking to her. And when she left 10 years later, aged 50, I went looking for somebody like her. I wanted somebody to replace her in the same kind of way. So some of these things, you don't have to invest a lot of money in. Once you get to the national level of youth or regional level of youth councils and, you know, UK youth parliaments and so on, of course there's a resource implication, but it's pretty modest compared to most other forms of public expenditure. Youth participation doesn't actually cost a huge amount of money, so it should be within the grasp, within the possibility of most countries if they believe in it. I just go back to the opening words that I said, which is we do have the platforms, we have the mechanisms, I think we have the understanding over a generation about what we sort of would like to see as a blueprint, a model of youth participation or models of youth participation. The real question is making it happen, putting it into place. And we're not very good at doing that in a lot of places. And the other thing is, and I think this is directed definitely you guys at the back of the room, you've also got to fight for it. I mean, I had to fight for it when I was young because these things didn't exist. And Thomas and I were at a conference 3 weeks ago in Brussels where it was about the decline of civic space for young people, and it was about how since COVID and restrictions in COVID have continued to prevail, and so this has limited the space for young people to participate. And I got a bit frustrated by that and said, there probably was a golden age, but it was a short period, 1999 to 2019, when actually you could have your voice without any particular penalties. You weren't going to get imprisoned, you weren't going to get beaten up by the police, you weren't going to get arrested, you weren't going to get excluded from schooling and so on, because we need young people's voice. It was not always like that. And people had to fight for it, and people had to suffer from it. It was a struggle. And the same applies to democracy more generally. These things are a struggle. And Barack Obama said recently that maybe your generation, not my generation, your generation have got to learn how to fight for it again. And you've got to keep fighting for it. My generation was privileged to have, my generation from Western Europe, and I'm being very particular about that, was the golden generation of no wars, regular employment, increasing youth participation, all the benefits that my generation have accrued. That won't apply to my kids, and it won't apply to you, and you've got to fight for it.
So go and fight for your rights. I think this is the most appropriate thought for conclude this conversation. Dear guests, thank you for I'm sure we'll be available for additional questions also during the coffee break.
Of course. Yeah.
And we will meet again in 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back. How was your coffee? Yeah, I hope it kicked in because now it's time to kick some ideas into action. I'm pleased to share the idea and results of participatory mechanism for youth involvement, IDEATHON, together with 3 amazing guests, each bringing a different perspective. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Christian Nematz, project coordinator and the leader of the initiative, Ms. Tina Maroch as a representative of the city TUI, and Ms. Sara Bresnik as a representative of active youth from Murska Sobota, a city from northeast of Slovenia. But before we start the roundtable, I would like to invite you to watch a short introduction about the IDEATHON project and its main purpose.
Across Europe, young people are calling for more meaningful participation in shaping their communities. Add Something Meaningful is an Erasmus Plus project that answers this call. Together, and along more than 2 years, youth, municipalities, and organizations have tested a powerful tool for participation, the IDEATHON. Add Something Meaningful brings youth and local authorities together to co-create solutions. The goal is to strengthen democracy by making youth participation real at the local level. Yet, too often, young people feel excluded from decisions that shape their lives. Participation builds trust, inclusion, and a stronger future. That is why engaging youth is essential for our communities. Throughout the project, we have tested the IDEATHON methodology as a tool for youth participation at a local level. An IDEATHON is a fast-paced, participatory event where young people work in teams to solve local challenges. In just 2 days, they move from ideas to concrete solutions, presenting proposals directly to decision makers and deciding which project will be implemented. With the commitment of all partners and throughout 2 years, 16 IDEATHONs were implemented across Italy, Finland, Slovenia, and France. More than 250 young people took part, many from disadvantaged or underrepresented groups, to design solutions for their communities. The project's results were very promising in different countries. In Italy, youth transformed abandoned spaces into art, sports, and memorial projects. In Finland, young people designed safe public spaces, inclusive hangouts, and cultural events. In Slovenia, IDEATHONs created youth spaces, cultural festivals, and reshaped school environments. In France, rural youth revived stadiums, led carnivals, and organized exhibitions on women's rights. Youth addressed challenges like loneliness and exclusion, lack of safe spaces, limited cultural opportunities, and barriers to civic engagement. From Caravaggio's Illuminati Art Hub to Oulu's Hangout Lounge to Coccola's Cosplay Convention, youth ideas became reality. Municipalities committed funding, ensuring solutions.
Of IDEATHON, but I think very soon you can tell us more about this project, about this mechanism, and what is it about?
This more live, huh?
Okay, thank you so much. I hope that all of you enjoyed the video. The video about the IDEATHON was one of the results, in fact, of the project per se. We had 4 different videos for each of the country. As I mentioned at the beginning, we did the IDEATHON. We implemented the IDEATHONs in Slovenia, in France, in Italy, and in Finland. So we prepared this video as an experience, as also as a testimonial of the young people, what they got from this experience, being part of the IDEATHON, being part of the project. Shortly about the project. Yeah, the project initiated as an idea because we saw that young people want to say something, they are engaged, they would like to be engaged. They're not engaged in a typical sense that we are. They're seeing as engagement, so they are not going to vote. They are not becoming part of the parties, but they're engaged in a different way. In a way that they like to be focused on specific topics. They also don't really like. Here I'm generalizing, but they don't really like the general politics, but they want to be on different topics.
What kind of topics are they?
In fact, it's different. Different topics, sure, the sustainability, it was in the last years an important, a specific topic that is connected to the local community. They can see the results. I think here, right now, it's really important for them to see the results of it. And from this, we saw, okay, let's do something. Let's do something that will engage them to have the power to do something in their local community. So the basic of this project was, okay, we wanted to give the voice to the young people, but also we wanted to connect them to the municipality. The municipality are the one that are empowered to really implement their ideas and so on. And in fact, we were talking before about this kind of like the attitude of the municipality. Also, the municipality were like mostly really, they wanted to do something. They wanted to engage the young people, but what we saw that they don't know how. They really have this like different way of reaching them and so on. So we lose this communication between young people and the municipality. There is not existing anymore. So what we did in this project, we add also the NGOs, the youth organizations. So basically what we want here I said at the beginning, to make the bridge. The bridge is the youth organization. So the youth organization is the one that is connected with the local youths, and is also connected to the municipality, can represent the youth with the municipality. So we wanted to make this, let's say, triangle or whatever, so they can communicate in a proper way. And this is why meaningful in one sense, because they can hear each other and they can listen to each other. So this was the basic idea of it. So through that we developed, first we did the research, then we developed like the methodology of the IDEATHON to do it, to implement it. And now in the last period we did some advocacy, so we're talking with the municipality how to make it this sustainable.
Mr. Nemat said that this interaction doesn't exist, but Ms. Maro, how much interaction do young people usually have with municipality decision makers?
Yes, I would totally agree with Christian, because I think that youth organizations, youth workers are there to be the bridge between the public authority and young people. And I would say that also, even for the youth worker, it's hard to create this space of trust with youngsters, but this is our main focus in our youth center. And when we create this, then we can take their trust like little ball of hearts to the municipality and ask them, we have here the ball of hearts from our youngsters, please, can you make it happen? So I think this is actually really, really nice. And I think also that for my municipality, so municipality of Ptuj, is actually like this, that people working for youth in the municipality are really trying to work with youth, and they're actually asking us a lot of questions. They're all the time in dialogue with us as a youth center. And this is really, really nice, especially after implementation of IDEATHON. This connection actually exploded in the sense that also the municipality has trust in us. Okay, you are doing the youth work, you have the youth, you hear the youth, okay, let's make this happen. And I was in the middle, I heard this from the municipality, but then I heard the same thing from the youth. You have the municipality, you brought the mayor here, so okay, you have it, I trust you now. So we were in between with big responsibility, but what was the most beautiful part in between was that we were the lucky ones, the youth worker were the lucky ones, because we had a lot of ideas, a lot of youngsters. In the end, we had included like visitors, but like participants, more than 500 youngsters in our IDEATHON. After the implementation of IDEATHON, and it's amazing.
Sarah, as a participant, what motivated you to join the IDEATHON?
Well, my friend, Mario, who was also collaborating with me, we were both in this together. He invited me to the first meeting in the youth center in Primorska called MIK, with 2 Ks. And it was a very lovely presentation of what all can be presented from just your idea what to give to the municipality. I mean, to the society. From the young people to everybody, basically. And it was just a good creative outlet in general. Just a good thought, a positive thought that can materialize itself and go a long way. Into philosophy, into activities, into food. We had food. It was a big part of it, and everybody loved it. It was so simple, yet so effective. And also other things, but...
So your expectation came true?
Yes. Well, organization was a bit hard, because we are also in the eastern region of Slovenia. It's a bit harder to find connections, because our event included a bit of exotic themes. I mean, we had a Japanese themed event. And sadly, in Slovenia and in the eastern region, we don't have a lot of, for instance, Japanese covers, Japanese bands. So this was a good pioneering challenge, if not else. And now we know how to prepare better and how to preventively find out the best solutions, the best scenarios, and how to replace the naughty race.
Mr. Nemac, how did you ensure that participants from very different backgrounds could all collaborate effectively in their groups? Because you were divided in groups.
Yeah. Just like to mention that I didn't mention before, how it's like how the IDEATHON works. In fact, the IDEATHON, it is an event, a 2-day event, and we prepare different non-formal activities, so also to facilitate the inclusion of all of the participants. So the first day they come there, the young people come there, they meet each other, they start brainstorming about the ideas, and then they make the groups, because the groups are divided. Not all groups are like they didn't submit themselves as a group, but they are divided. So they can meet each other, they can submit different ideas. After that, they gather the idea, they select it, and they start preparing the projects. So after the first day, we have, let's say, a project idea that is more or less finalized. Then they have 2 weeks to finalize it. In between, they meet the feasibility committee. They judge the idea based on if it's feasible or not. So they are not talking about the content of the idea, but if it's feasible or not. After that, they finalize the young groups finalize it, and then on the second day, they presented the idea, they voted for the idea, and then they have 6 months to realize it. One of the idea, as Sarah mentioned, is the Japanese day that they prepared. So this is how it's structured. And about the inclusion, basically we tried also to our Finland partner, a French partner, they did a lot, also Italian partner. All of the partners get also to different realities to get the youngster on board. The Italian went to the prison, let's say the prison, so that the young people there could have a voice to say something. The Finlands in Finnish, they work a lot with migrants. The same like the French partners, they went to the this suburban, let's say more marginalized youth. So all of us try to include a lot of people that don't have maybe this political power. Before we said about, yeah, sure, the organized youth are the one with political power, but we wanted to give the voice also to the others. How we do that? Because of the non-formal activities, they don't need always to have this kind of like language barrier. We see a lot of this, but with drawing, with different approaches, we give them the voice. So they also, like, with one of the most important, we build this safe space for them to really engage properly with their heart.
But do you have any feedback? Were there challenges in integrating youth ideas into actual local policies?
Yes, there were some. For sure, the ideas the selected ideas were really diverse. So from one-day event, for a cycle of events, for like to the, I don't know, reshaping of a space, to getting the, for example, the municipality of Piran and municipality of Caran, at least in Slovenia, and also some from Italy, they give a space to young people. So basically, they prepare a new youth center, let's say, which is amazing. But what happened is that these 6 months were not enough. The planned 6 months were not enough. So a lot of things. A lot of bureaucracy came there, and so how to adjust that, how to fix that. At least we were really well collaborating with all of these municipalities. They were truly, like, they wanted to do that. They were interested, and they really wanted to give to the young people what they want. But here a lot of bureaucracy came in play, and it was not that easy, at least for the timing perspective.
So the things are still developing.
Some things are still developed, like the finalizing, because we are like really to the end of the project. So really, I think 1 or 2 are really finalizing the stuff, but otherwise, other things or rather ideas were implemented well.
Sarah, what was the idea of your group, and what was the most challenging part for your group when developing your project idea and presenting it to the committee?
So our event got the name Samurai, which is similar to samurai, but in Slovenia it means just paradise. So just a comfort space for diverse ideas and authenticity maybe of some people. So not just the genericness, but yes, we wanted to present to Eastern region of Slovenia the Japanese culture, but not in the general sense, but more in a psychological way, where you take some time to rest. So it was more of a get well event. So we included food, music, art, also a bit of an art therapy, where people just talked by, yes, we had coffee, tea, matcha, and also candy, and ramen and everything, okay. And then they just drew when they were talking, and interesting art came by. So this was all good and well, but the challenge in this contrast was we couldn't do big things, just because I mentioned earlier, Eastern Slovenia doesn't, the mentality is still kind of closed. So people do just the traditional things. It's not like the Western Slovenia, where people experiment, and there are not a lot of Japanese cover bands maybe, as we also wanted a bit of more fun and fire in the event, but it just wasn't possible. So we stuck by the calm side of the event, and we kind of tried to do good what we could also manage. We couldn't go to a breakthrough, so actually do something really new. But we kind of knocked on the door. So maybe the next event in Primorska Sobota will be even more what we were aiming for, step by step.
Ms. Marov, what surprised you the most about the creativity and solutions proposed by the young participants?
I would say that the revolution side of the youngsters, because I think the common general thinking is that youngsters are not, they don't have so much power to do the changes nowadays, but I think they have. It was the most exciting thing was that they didn't give up. They wanted the challenging idea, and the winning idea was to create a space for youngsters. We already have a youth center. It's a space for youngsters. They can use it freely. We have our organized activities there, or they can just come and play football. They can drink tea or coffee. So we have the place. But their problem is that they would like not to have a youth worker there all the time. So they would like to be alone in their space for youngsters. So they wanted to create an application by themselves to have the electric doors on the youth center so they can go inside by themselves, and you will apply with your name, surname, and some of your personal data, so we can find you if something bad happens. For example, they had everything planned out. But then the challenges came because we are a public institution, we are scared for the safety of our youngsters that are there. So the authorities said at some point, this is not possible. So the youngsters said, why? If you told us, you trust us. And then the big discussions came. They were writing by themselves. We were just mentoring them. They were writing to the municipality. Why do you not trust us? They were writing to the director of our public institution. And I was really encouraged them to speak with their own words, not with my words, but with their own words. In the end, they didn't get even an answer from the authorities. But still, the authorities said to our youth workers, so now you can see the connection with the municipality, youth center, and youngsters, because municipality told us, please, Tina, tell your youngsters why this is not possible. It's really nice idea, but this is not possible because of that. And it was my responsibility then to represent the youngsters, what they told me. So we were the bridge, but in the end, youngsters did want to have the answer from the municipality, because they have this passion to change stuff, and they want to do it directly, like the professors told before.
Did they get it?
They didn't get this part, but they did understood it. But municipality actually created, they get financial support for all the other ideas that were not winning ideas, so they were really supportive to the whole part. But this was the most exciting thing I learned again, that they have this power to change stuff.
So you were a bridge.
Yes, we are a bridge, a big high bridge with high waves, but still we are. The bridge is connected well now, and I think because of the IDEATHON, it's much stronger now, this bridge. I can say that we can see after 1 year now that it's much stronger.
Nice to hear that, right? When young people were preparing their ideas, were they thinking, because you mentioned before sustainability, were they thinking also about this topic?
Sustainability per se, I'm not sure how much project went to that direction. I'm not sure even if, because it's the challenge. We said that we wanted to put it as specific as possible. So we, municipality and the youth organization, prepare the challenge, and based on the challenge, they prepare something sustainable. So in the sense of sustainability, not really, but they were thinking about sustainability of the project, so of their idea. So also the long run of the idea, not to having once and that's it, but trying to really reflect. To free something. Yeah.
Can you share an example of a winning project
and how the 3,500 euro price was used to implement it.
Okay, as I said, the project were really diverse. Like from the Japanese day that Sarah mentioned, we did. So it's one day event where we immerse in the Japanese culture, and we really see from the theater to the music to the food to the anime. So a lot of different things, and through the writing and everything, to the, for example, concrete youth center that is building. It's not building. It's there, but it's renovated in the sense it will be given to the youth. The newly established establishing process, this process in the establishment of a youth council of the municipality of Piran, who then will manage that youth space that they got. So here it's like a concrete continuation of the idea. I think it's a great experience of the municipality of Ptuj, the IDEATHON from Ptuj. It was great when we're talking about sustainability of the engagement, long-term engagement of young people. So I could give the word to Tina for that, because it's a great story of how, in fact, the IDEATHON was able to engage and really make the young active.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. We had a lot of fun in the events. I think we did a really good job working together as a team, and we had fun. For me as a youth worker and working with youth a lot, the most beautiful thing was that we actually we have 4 middle schools in the city of Ptuj. 4. So we called all 4 of them, and I talked with the professors who know a lot of youngsters. We want to create groups with youngsters that have different backgrounds, because they know youngsters, they know what they came from, how is the economic status and so on. So they brought youngsters from different backgrounds that didn't know each other. And in the end, it happened like this, that these groups created one whole big group. It was like from 3. There were 3 in the winning group. It came 70 people in the group. And the brilliant part was that the youngsters from, I don't know, gymnasium start to hang out with the youngsters from, I don't know, economic school or school for the electricity, because they didn't hang out with them, with each other, because the gymnasium is the highest level of education, is the mindset also of the young people, not just of the city of Ptuj. So we actually, not expecting that, but we actually came and crossed one big bridge again with that. So it was a brilliant experience that we had 27 people. In the end, 70 people were working, not only one idea, but 2 ideas, even three ideas. And they engaged actually more than 500 young people. And like Christian said, the projects were really sustainable, because, in example, with one group, we actually forgot to make the posters for the event. But 4 days before, we were talking with the group, okay, we forgot, but now this is the moment to check out if posters work. And we didn't do anything. We did not even make an Instagram event, nothing. We didn't post anything, and 300 youngsters came. Because the information came from peer to peer, there were 70 people organizing this.
Yeah.
So they spread the information, and you don't need this. And I think that we have nice stories, and the sustainable part is that we are still having this connection. The groups are still active, they're still calling us. It's ongoing process.
Plus the municipality will give more budget to the events, so also to implement other ideas that were not selected, let's say.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is also money is one of the challenges next to time, right?
Yep.
How did you solve that problem?
It's like, okay, some part of the budget was connected directly to the project, so it was co-funded by the Erasmus Plus. But yeah, in Ptuj, in municipality of Piran, I'm not sure for the other, but I think also some of the parties mentioned. In fact, the municipality give additional money, additional 5,000, 7,000 euro to implement also other idea or to make this idea bigger. Also, what we wanted as a result of this project is to have a signature of the intent, of the letter of intent from the municipality that they will implement the IDEATHON or other participatory processes to engage young people in their everyday life, let's say. So basically, in Slovenia, municipality of Primorska signed this, municipality of PiNA signed this. So they gonna have more IDEATHONs in the future. So they said, okay, we will give the budget for that because we saw that it's a great way of engaging young people. And also the other, also the partners mentioned, like 3, 4, 5 municipalities that they will continue with the IDEATHONs, which is a great achievement also for us.
But based on Ms. Maro's story, we can say that IDEATHON connects people, right?
Absolutely.
Sarah, do you agree with
Yes,
this?
I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How did you feel? Did you feel that your ideas were truly heard and valued by the decision makers?
Decision makers or who?
From the
Because-
municipality, let's say.
Yes, I mean, because Christian was an awesome supporting. He gave me every information at any time. This was the best thing. My municipality, yes, I had mainly contact with the youth workers in Primorska Sobota,
Okay.
where it was also executed. They were very helpful. So yes, the best they could do, they did. Not all was possible. At the right time, they had also other events going on, so it was 2 things at the same time. So they tried as they could. And
They did their best.
yes, it was on the positive side.
Christian, looking at the similar projects in Italy, Finland and France, what lessons did you apply in Slovenia to make the IDEATHON more effective?
In fact, firstly we run one round of pilot events, pilot implementation, and from that, after that we will have a meeting with partners, and then we started these 3, like the 3 main IDEATHONs in each country. We saw that it really depends on the target group. It really depends on with whom you work. We see a lot of challenges to engaging young people in the sense of really spread the words to them. So also this, as mentioned, youth organization came there and helped us with that, to having this pool of young people. Still, from time to time, we have some challenges with that. And we saw that, okay, how to do it now? Because firstly, just having an online event, it's not possible. Having poster, it's not enough. What Tina mentioned, and again, this is something for the continuation, like this B2B board, like to say something, hey, you know this. And we saw that this is the way. So after the first piloting, we saw, okay, we need to do more to collaborate with even more organization to get this, to spread the knowledge about the event. So this is for sure something. If we have the marginalized youth that have maybe more problems with the language barrier, more problems with the concentration, something like that, or they are younger, we need more facilitators, so we add that part. So we try to really say, okay, we did this good, but we want to do that even more, and so the next part was better, it's much better.
Ms. Marok, what advice would you give to young people who want to get involved in local policy but feel unsure where to start and how to start?
Yeah, I would say to them that I'm asking this question myself all the time, because sometimes it's hard to start, but maybe the best advice is just to start, and then we will figure it out. And I think this is also the idea of IDEATHON. Just you need to start, you need to find your interest, then we will figure it out somehow. But maybe because youth organizations are the important bridge, I would say a lot of small villages have some kind of youth organizations or organizations working with youth. It doesn't have to be youth center, it can be, I don't know, a sewing non-formal education part somewhere with the local grandmothers, and your grandmothers are teaching their daughters and they're young, and you need to find this in your local community. There are people that can help you and that go through the same stuff. So it's hard, but just start and figure out later. That's my point of view.
Our guest before said that we have to go out and speak with youth, and now we have Sarah here. So please tell us what does your generation want? What do you need?
It's an easy question.
I mean, honestly,
Where to start?
I kind of outcasted myself from the wave of our generation because I had to have a little time out. It is a lot because individualism is kind of rising. Individuality. Yeah. I'm not sure. People get very anxious very quickly. We are 29. Our wave of it's not okay because it's a lot of overstimulation of information, and people get distressed about suddenly they need this from 20 to 30. It gets more stress than it should be, because we should really just stick with our personality, not get out of our way, and then people try to compensate in 1 year a lot of things, a lot of bonds, a lot of people, a lot of, media, right? A lot of, younger people than me try to just be awesome on media, perfect, wholesome studies, work with parents, family, partners. How? I think the most important thing should be right now to just let people be and let them rest to recuperate, because big waves are coming and you cannot always fight the waves. You have to rest to catch the new one. I went surfing this year because I wanted to train my mind to rest and be active, not just be active, then you get
To regenerate.
So, yes, exactly.
Mr. Maroch, Ms. Maroch, how do you see young generation, young people from your perspective?
I would say that I definitely see that they really know what they don't want, but they are not quite sure what they do want. So this is a big problem. Maybe not a problem, maybe it's a nice platform, a nice challenge to create something new from this part. So I would say that this is it, and I would agree that youth workers should also have a kick somehow, just to have to try new stuff, because a lot of times from that comes good outcome, very good outcome. It's like in 90%. So I would say like this.
Christian, do you share the same opinion?
Yeah, for sure, yes. No, it's. I'm thinking all the time when we're talking with about young people. It is so. It's a diverse group. It's a really diverse group, from a really active one that really wanted to change something and fighting for their meanings and so on. We saw it some years ago with all these protests from Future Fridays. Yeah. So they were active, and when you give them the challenge, one special challenge, they are there. The problem is, a lot of time, they are, what Sarah mentioned, this overwhelming of the information to the social media. There are all this kind of every time they need to be present. Every time they are all observed by the phones and the videos, and it is really overwhelming, all of these positions. So it's a lot of challenges. And I really understand why they think they need to be perfect all the time. And I think that's, as Tina said before, be active. It's a good way of breaking that. not be basically an object of observation of the others and think that you need to be perfect and be there, but try to find that in different way, just like, and find your space where you can be what you are, and this is really important, I think.
But one thing that we want to make perfect is IDEATHON. So how do you see that it will evolve in the coming years?
Especially some of the municipalities really wanted to continue with that, which is amazing. I'm really happy. Some of the youth organization that also said, okay, let's let youth centers mentioned, okay, we can in fact build our program out of it. So let's invite young people to tell us what they want, so we can spend some budget on that. Then a lot of follow-up project, I think, will come out of it, because we have also in the summer some seminar about the IDEATHON, and a lot of different organizations through Europe. They were like, oh, can we use that for that and that? Can we use that for this project? So I think it's well structured. It's really well prepared, and I think that from this a lot of things will happen. Also, already we did the IDEATHON with entrepreneur. We did the IDEATHON with also some NGOs. So we really try to use this methodology as much as possible and give it to different contexts, because it's really flexible.
Ms. Maroch, what's your opinion? How can local authorities ensure that youth engagement is sustainable and not just one-time event?
Yeah, trust the process. I would really say that trust the process. All the time, also when I'm speaking with the municipality or with youngsters, I'm not speaking about the results. I'm all the time speaking about the process, because the end event was just a 5 hours event, but we actually were working on the event for 7 months. So these 7 months were a lot more meaningful for us than this final event. So I would really say that we all need to trust the process, and we all need to take, I would also say, a leap of faith sometimes. You just need to throw yourself and you will figure it out during the way. Just not be so rigid. Youth work is really like, it was a beautiful said it was jazz improvisation. It's all the time jazz improvisation. But sometimes we are not able to improvise good because we don't have enough support. So I think that municipality should hear this from our part, and I would also say that one big part of this is that giving the support and to connect with other organizations, and actually having this idea came from Koper. They came from international project, and we put it in Ptui. It's a small country. I went to Oulu in Finland. It's a small city. I learned about IDEATHON, and something great happened, and this was like connection this. And if I would explain in the beginning to the mayor of my city how this will happen, she would say, oh my God, nothing will happen out of this. But please trust the process. Sometimes it's like this.
Trust,
like
right? If somebody asks you, what's the best thing of IDEATHON?
We should for sure need to see her post on our Facebook of Sarah comments. She mentioned how much it impacts also her way of saying in that moment and so on. So I think that these individual aspects are here really important, where people can maybe find something in there, like that they can do something. Really the impact on the individual level. This story of Tui, where these youngsters were like, okay, we want to organize this concert also, and they were like all joining together, and the mayor said, okay, we will give you money for this concert, and they did, and they are active. This kind of stuff are priceless for me. These are the best results from the IDEATHON. Sure, the municipality will support it again. But these relationships that creates with youngster, with in fact us, like we are starting much more collaborating after this project and through this project, also the other stuff. So these kind of connections I think is really important, because we really, Sarah mentioned individualism, we lost connection to with people, and IDEATHON for sure gives us back.
Very meaningful. Miss Naro?
Yeah, I would agree. It's the connection that we added, like connecting two sides with the bridge. We did this really nice. But I would say that for me, but talking from my perspective, that I'm taking away from this IDEATHON is the presence of a youth worker in the daily life of youngsters. Because it was and still is beautiful that youngsters are collaborating with you so much that they are calling you on Sunday. They have some problems, some challenges, you are there for them. And after the IDEATHON happens a lot of that. Youngsters needed the presence of a youth worker, and we came to have this sweet problem, but it still is a problem, that there is not enough youth workers if things started to rise up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I'm taking away with me this, that the presence of a youth worker is important, and I'm taking away that the IDEATHON opened a big space for the challenge that we are facing. And the youth work works, but we need youth workers.
Sarah?
She's a good youth worker. We can feel it all.
We choose just the good. We already heard your opinion shared on Facebook wall, but
yes, I will also. You just gave me an idea. I am thinking of doing an article about it to go a bit deeper into it, and I will probably do it on my website. So a lot of things can be created if there's connection. If there's no connection, nothing blooms. And surprising things can bloom if just there's that spark of chemistry, just two similar ideas, or just one supporting the other. I'm sad that I couldn't attend your concert. Right?
You can still come every time we have a lot of concerts.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I have a cousin too, so he just had his birthday yesterday. So
Welcome. Anytime.
maybe you're welcome. You see.
We know everything.
that's it. That's
the
point.
beauty of
Yeah,
it.
that's the beauty and the point. For all of you, if you could give one key takeaway to our audience about the value of youth participation in local decision making, what would it be? Go and fight for your rights, like we heard before.
That's for sure. This is for sure. And I think that how we ended the last session was really important. What we perceive as normality, it's not normal. A lot of generation fight for that. And yes, if we don't want to lose all of the privilege, we need to fight and don't take it for granted. And I think this is really important. I'm on the pessimistic notes, sure, but I think that we cannot predict the future. So I really hope that we will enlighten the youth, and they will fight for their rights, and they will make this place better.
Yes, sir.
This fight part is really resonating with me every time. But maybe I would say that I don't know. I'm just always be on the side of the youngsters. Maybe if you don't agree with youngster, it doesn't mean it's not true or this is his truth. But be positive with youngsters, but still be very critical when you need to be. But still listen to youngster and be on the side of all young people.
It touches your heart.
I mean, yes, empathy goes a long way. And my takeaway, yes, all these serious things, and also making origami really calms the mind and is very therapeutic. it saves a lot of problems in the, like, you know, placebo problems in your head. It just do just one thing and then, oh, nothing's so bad. I can just go. Just action over attitude, you know, where you just do something, as we said before, we don't know what we do, we just jump into the water, a safety net will appear. Or we will learn how to swim or surf. Just do it.
Just do it.
Maybe you should share this idea of origami with our government and some other people.
Yeah.
Authorities.
Yeah, the coffee before you.
Let's say.
Yeah. Mindfulness, right?
Yes. Thank you for this idea. And now, dear audience, it's time for you. If you have any question, our guests, I'm sure they are here to answer it. Maybe the question, when's the next date for the next IDEATHON?
For the...
Do you already know?
Sadly not, but yeah, I need to have some calls with municipalities and let's see what is going on.
And some origami.
And with origami for sure, on a stressful moment.
Thank you very much, dear guests, and I think they deserve more than a big applause. As we already heard, this conference is organized as part of the Erasmus Plus project and continues PiNA's long-standing work in the field of youth. And since we've shown such great interest in collaborating with them, I think you will join me in welcoming them to the stage with a round of applause. One more. Please welcome Ms. Nena Bibica from PiNA community, who will tell us more about CERV.
My technical assistances.
Evropsko teritorijalno sodelovanje. Moj cilj je tudi spodbujati sodelovanje preko
Of course, we tried during the break and it was working, of course.
Sorry, little pictures. In the meantime, Nena, did you get some interesting ideas listening to this conference?
So I will start. We will move here and we will let them work. I just need to move. First of all, good afternoon. Also my name, I'm Nena Bibica, I'm the national contact point of the CERV program. You probably heard about citizens' equality, rights and values. It's one of the founding programs of the European Union. Why am I here is because we are a lot of times talking about youth participation. We are having a lot of roundtables, and sooner or later the question of money arises. So as municipality or local community is saying we can't do that because we don't have funds. As we heard the first speakers, they said it's not something that is very expensive. It's a lot of work and your wish to contribute to citizens' engagement on this part, youth participation. And the other good question for all the municipalities, organizations, NGOs, CSOs, youth centers, there are also a lot of funds available in the European Union. Of course, we have the Erasmus Plus, so which is the main program who is supporting youth, but we also have CERV. CERV is a new program that was founded in 2021. But what is important of CERV is that the former European for Citizens program is in CERV. In the past, a lot of municipalities, a lot of youth centers were working on Europe for Citizens program to advocate and stimulate citizens' engagement, also youth participation. All these calls are still available and they will come soon. So I'm here today to present in a very short way what CERV is and emphasizes 3 calls that are coming in the future months that can support you if you want to start engage young people in your local community. So our CERV has 4 strengths. One is values, rights, Daphne, and citizens engagement participation. The values is focusing on promoting values. Also, I will emphasize 3 calls, but what you need to understand, or I want to be your takeaway today, is that also other calls can be useful to engage young people if you want to engage on a specific theme like promoting values, promoting rights, or engage young people in discussing about civic space. Then you can check also other calls that are available under the CERV program. Under values, I would like to point out to you the Charity call, which is supposed to come soon, in 6 months probably, and it's the call when you, as an CSO and NGO, you can work with young people in discussing the fundamental rights, values, youth space, the importance of civic space. This is all that is available for these specific topics, and in each of the CERV call you can have young people as your target group. What CERV also really wants you to do if you are targeting young people, it's not to work for them but work with them. As we are hearing for a couple of times today, engaging young people doesn't mean working for young people. Starting from your opinion, but get in touch, and that's very important if you are working on a CERV call already in the phase of developing the idea. Develop your project around their needs and not your thought what their needs are. So really engage young people already in the framing the idea, framing of the project. CERV projects are really meant to help the target group to address their needs, and to be able to do that, it's very essential to include them also in the preparation of the project and project idea. The other call that can be interesting or could be interesting are the equal and the gender equality. We had discussed a bit about gender equality also in the participation among youth. We heard some ideas of masculinity, okay, stereotypes. We have a very important and very deep problem in gender stereotypes, and it's very affecting the young population. So if you want to engage with young people discussing gender stereotypes, discussing gender gaps, we had gender care gap, which is very important for young people who are starting the family. So who will take care of the child, or who will take care of the elderly people in the family? Stereotyping, meaning that always, and I think it's around 83%, women take the leave for taking care of the child in Slovenia. This is something that is then affecting, of course, not just the women, but also the whole family. And these problems are very important for young people. They are in the age of starting a family, of having the discussion, no, women have ever had, are you going to have a baby? This is something that should never be asked, but it's still asked on the interviews for jobs. So in these 2 calls, you can address with young people these specific topics that are related to their futures. In the equal call, we are talking about fighting all kinds of discriminations. Discrimination, racial, anti-Ziganism, anti-Muslim hatred. A lot of problems that we have in our societies and are very important also for young people. So you can, as a CSO, as a local authority, discuss with young people in your community how they feel about this these problems, how they feel it should be addressed. Why is there a rise in discrimination, maybe in a very small and local community, and talk with them about their needs, but also their fears, because what we've learned is that a lot of discrimination is coming out of fear. And you can use Equal Call to address these kind of topics with young people. I want to point out Daphne, because Daphne is a very important call which is tackling violence. Unfortunately, there is a lot of violence. It's a lot of violence against women. We live in a society where it's rising violence against minorities. So in the CERV we have this one dedicated call, which have also a priority for local authorities to address and fight against violence against women, girls, and all kind of group of at risk, to build local strategies, to include community, to bring together also young people in discussing how to fight violence also in very local areas. When we're talking about CERV, of course, mainly these are international projects, but what is important about CERV is that you can, in most of priorities, have also national projects. This allows you as a local community, as a CSO, to address a very specific topic of your local community. You don't need to find a lot of partners, but if you have a very specific local community, you can address it, make out a pilot, a good pilot, and then disseminate this good practice across Europe. And this is, I think, a kind of an added value, because if we are talking about violence against women or discrimination, the local realities can be very different from national and international. So you don't need to find this common question all the Europeans have, but you can really focus on what the needs of your local communities are. And now I'm coming to the three calls I would like to point out for engaging young people. So the network of towns, the town training, citizens engagement and participation, and the last one is the child call. Don't be scared. Child in the CERV means from 0 to 18. So a part of young people could be covered, and the needs of young people also under the child call. The first three calls are very interesting to start, because especially the network of towns allows you to discover good practices across Europe, to learn from different municipalities who are already engaging young people. You can go and travel to different local communities to learn how they did. For example, if you learn today that IDEATHON is something you really want to do, you can build around this a network of towns, meaning that you will travel, get engaged with Work 2 or Primorska Sobota. You will travel, you will learn from them, their discussions, their experience. You can bring some your young people from your community, so that they meet young people from Primorska Sobota and 2 who were already did this process, and then they together can address some issues or some challenges you have in your local community. So this is, I'm very happy to announce that it's coming very soon, so keep posted, and it should be published in a couple of months. The second one is the town training. It's a smaller brother of Network of Towns. It allows you to give the opportunity to a larger group of young people to travel, to meet other young people, to meet cultures, to see good practices across Europe. The citizens engagement and participation, as you can see, it's the name, it's meant to engage. There is no limit who we want to engage, so young people absolutely can be a target group. What is important when we're talking citizens engagement and participation is that you need to focus on a specific topic. The project are 2 years, and in a 2 year you can't increase participation all over a country or all over Europe. So when you are thinking about citizens engagement participation project, think about a specific challenge you have on your local community. Can be, we will see the priorities, but normally everything that is priority of the European Union can be addressed. So it can be climate, it can be inclusion, it can be spatial planning, it can be a lot of things. Also, this one is supposed to come very soon, so keep on this picture. So these are the national contact points. If you find some of the calls could be interesting for you, get in touch with your national contact point. We are 24 across Europe at the moment. If you don't have the national contact point, you can get in touch with whoever you want on the list. We have this agreement that we are helping organization without support, national support, in exploring, getting to know CERV. If you have half of idea what you want to do, now it's the time. As I said, in about 14 days we will have the new working program with the timeline of calls for 2 years. So now it's the time to think about what you want to do, how do you want to include young people, find some idea, get in touch with your national contact point so that you don't miss then the preparation or the first month or two of the call with the thoughts, what should I do, what I want to do, because when the call will be published in a couple of months, you will be already on the start line with the idea, and you could really then start working a good project proposal. For the CERV, you need to write a good project proposal because the success rate is quite low, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. So you just really need to engage with your young people already now, discussing the idea, discussing the challenges, the needs, so that you will be able then to present this this project. The first deadlines will be around March, so you have plenty of times to do that. If you start now, maybe a bit empowered what you've heard today, now it's the opportunity. So if there is a will, there is a way. We saw that there is also financial support, and I think that there is no excuses for local community to really start working for young, but also with young people to address challenges of the local areas. This is the brief. Thank you very much. If you have any other questions about CERV, you can write us, and we will then forward your mail to your national contact point or get any feedback. You will receive a feedback from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can leave it here with us. And of course, thank you also to you, dear guests, dear audience, for your question, for your raised hands, and also for sharing your experiences with us. With this presentation, also we've come to the end of our official program, but the most important part, networking, is just about to begin. Please accept our invitation to a reception in the lobby and take the opportunity to network, exchange ideas, and meet new friends and connections. Once again, thank you for being with us, and we wish you a beautiful day.
Okay.